Never save money. That sentence came from my father, spoken quietly one evening when the house was silent. And it took me many years to understand why those words carried so much weight and pain behind them. Because in a small dry town where days passed slowly and dreams seemed even slower, my father was known as a man who worked hard but feared risk more than poverty itself, a man who believed that safety came from holding tightly instead of building something greater. He repaired tools for neighbors, fixed broken doors, sharpened blades, and mended old machines, earning just enough to keep food on the table. And every coin he received was treated like a fragile promise, wiped clean, counted carefully, and locked inside a small metal box hidden beneath the bed, where he believed his future waited patiently. People around him often said that saving was wisdom, that money in hand meant protection, that a man who saved would never fall, and my father listened to them with serious eyes, nodding in agreement, because fear had taught him that losing nothing was better than risking everything. At night, after dinner, he would open the metal box slowly, letting the sound of coins touch the quiet room, and for a moment his shoulders relaxed as if that small pile of money could shield us from hunger, sickness, and uncertainty. And he would whisper to himself that one day this box would save us. But days turned into months, and months into years, and the box never changed our lives. The roof still leaked when rain came, the floor stayed cold in winter, shoes wore thin, and meals remained small, and my mother often stood by the stove staring at the pot, stirring slowly, knowing there was nothing more to add. Sometimes she said softly that money hidden could not cook food, could not fix the house, could not grow on its own, and my father always answered the same way, saying tomorrow would be better, saying patience was the key, saying safety required sacrifice. As time passed, prices rose quietly while the box stayed the same. Work became harder, hands aged faster, and though the metal box grew heavier, life grew tighter, squeezing us little by little without asking permission. One night, when the room was dark and the wind slipped through the cracks in the walls, I asked him why we never bought anything new, why life always felt like waiting, and he told me that saving was how we survived, that holding money was the only way to stay alive in a cruel world, and I nodded even though something inside me did not understand. Then came a winter that changed everything, when work slowed, repairs stopped, and days passed without income, and for the first time the metal box was opened not with pride, but with fear, and each time it opened, it seemed smaller, lighter, less powerful than before. Medicine took part of it, food took another part, cold nights took the rest, and soon the box that once felt like safety began to look like a fragile illusion. One morning at the market, my father placed his savings on the counter, hoping to buy supplies to last us months. But the seller counted slowly and shook his head, explaining that prices had gone up again, that the same money now bought much less than before, and in that moment my father understood something he had never wanted to face. The money had waited, but the world had not. That night he spread the money on the table, counting it again and again, hoping it would somehow grow through effort alone. But it stayed the same, silent and powerless, and I watched him quietly until I finally asked what saving was for if it could not protect us when we needed it most. He had no answer. Days became heavier after that. Food became smaller, hope thinner, and sometimes my father sat alone outside, staring at nothing, feeling trapped between fear and regret, believing he had failed by holding too tightly instead of moving forward. One morning, as neighbors passed by carrying baskets of vegetables, bottles of milk, and crates of eggs, he noticed something different in their faces, a calm he did not have, a quiet confidence that did not come from hiding money but from producing something useful. That was the day he remembered an old idea he had once ignored, the idea of buying tools to make furniture, something he had talked about for years but never dared to try, and for the first time, instead of dismissing it, he listened. He took what little money remained, not without fear, and bought wood, basic tools and supplies, and when he started working in the backyard, I watched him build his first small table, shaky and imperfect, but real. At first, no one noticed, but slowly people began to ask, then buy, then return, and with each piece he sold, he reinvested, buying better tools, more materials, learning as he went, writing every cost and every gain in a small notebook. The work was tiring, but it felt different because for the first time effort created growth instead of exhaustion, and the money no longer disappeared silently, it moved, returned, and multiplied. One afternoon, my father looked at his hands, rough and tired, and said quietly that one table was worth more than years of saved coins. because it fed us, taught us, and created more value instead of losing it. I hugged him then, feeling pride where fear once lived, and he smiled with wet eyes, saying that he was not careless. He had simply learned too late that money must move to live. The metal box stayed forgotten under the bed, empty and useless, while life above it finally began to grow. And when people spoke about saving money, my father pointed to his workshop and said that saving money alone is like holding sand in your hands, because it always slips away, but making money work, even in small ways, builds something that lasts. That was the greatest lesson of his life, learned through hunger, fear, and courage, and it is why I say today, never save money, make it grow. After that lesson settled in his heart, life did not suddenly become easy, but it became honest, because every day my father woke up knowing that his effort was finally connected to a future that could grow instead of shrink, and even when mistakes happened, they taught more than years of fear ever had. Some weeks the wood cracked, some tables sold for less than expected, and sometimes buyers disappeared, but instead of hiding from these problems, my father faced them, adjusting, learning, and improving, understanding that movement creates answers while stillness only deepens doubt. Slowly the workshop expanded, not in size but in meaning, because neighbors started trusting his work, recommending him, bringing new ideas, and what once felt like a risky decision became the foundation of stability we never had before. Food on the table improved, not because money was saved, but because value was created, exchanged, and returned, and even small profits were reinvested with intention, turning effort into progress instead of survival into waiting. One evening, while counting the week's earnings, I noticed my father no longer smiled at the number itself, but at what it represented: tools, materials, time, learning, and growth. And that was when I realized he had stopped worshiping money and started respecting it. He often told me that money sitting still becomes weak, that it slowly loses its power while the world keeps moving, and that fear disguised as wisdom is one of the most dangerous traps a person can fall into. Years later, when the workshop became a small business, my father hired a neighbor who once laughed at his old metal box. And instead of pride, my father felt peace, because he understood that wealth is not about possession but about flow. The memory of hunger stayed with him, not as trauma, but as a reminder, a quiet voice that told him never to confuse safety with stagnation again. Sometimes I asked if he regretted the years spent saving instead of building, and he answered that regret is useless, but lessons are priceless, and that every wrong path becomes meaningful when it teaches you how to walk forward. On warm afternoons, sitting outside while the sound of tools echoed softly, he explained that money must be treated like a seed, because if you lock it away, it rots in silence, but if you plant it with care, it feeds many people over time. He told me that true security is not what you hide, but what you know how to create, and that skills, courage, and adaptability will always outlive any pile of saved coins. As I grew older, I understood that his lesson was never really about money, but about life itself, about refusing to freeze out of fear, about choosing movement over comfort, and about trusting yourself enough to start small and keep going. Today, when people tell me to save money above all else, I remember my father's tired hands and steady eyes, and I share his story, because some truths are learned only when waiting finally becomes too painful to endure. Never save money just to feel safe, because safety that does not grow will eventually disappear, and the world will keep moving without you. Make it work, make it move, make it grow, even if you begin with almost nothing, because the greatest wealth is built not by holding on, but by daring to create. With time, my father's story became more than a personal lesson. It became something others began to notice, not because he spoke loudly about success, but because his life quietly reflected a truth many were afraid to face, that safety does not come from stillness, but from the ability to respond when life changes its rules. People from nearby towns started coming, asking how he had transformed fear into stability, and he never answered with numbers or promises. He simply pointed to his hands and said that learning to create value is the only insurance that never expires. There were moments when the old fear tried to return, especially during slow seasons or uncertain months, but instead of closing himself off, my father adapted, creating new designs, offering repairs again, expanding his usefulness, understanding that flexibility is stronger than any locked box. At home, the metal box remained under the bed, untouched, almost forgotten, a silent reminder of the life we once lived, and sometimes when I found it while cleaning, I realized how small it looked compared to the freedom my father now carried in his posture and his voice. He began teaching me not just how to work with wood, but how to think, how to observe what people need, how to start even when confidence feels weak, and how action itself builds courage over time. He explained that money saved without purpose slowly becomes a burden, something you guard with fear, while money invested in effort becomes a partner that works alongside you, growing as you grow. As years passed, I noticed that the man who once counted coins at night now slept peacefully, not because he had more money, but because he had more options, more skills, and more trust in himself. One evening, while watching the sun disappear behind the rooftops, he told me that the real danger is not losing money, but losing the habit of trying, because once a person stops moving forward, even a full box will eventually empty. He said that poverty is not always about lack, but about limitation of vision, and that wealth begins the moment you decide to stop waiting for permission from fear. Now, when I face my own decisions, when hesitation whispers that it is safer to wait, I remember my father standing in the backyard, building his first imperfect table, choosing uncertainty over stagnation, and turning a small risk into a living future. This is why I repeat his words without fear or confusion, because they were earned through hardship, patience, and transformation. Never save money just to protect yourself from life. Use it to build something that protects you instead. As the years continued to move forward, my father's way of seeing the world slowly reshaped the way I saw my own future, because every sound of wood being cut, every careful measurement, and every mistake corrected with patience carried a lesson far greater than money itself, teaching me that growth is not loud, but constant, and that fear only survives where action refuses to enter. There were seasons when demand dropped, when orders slowed, and when uncertainty tried to whisper again that holding back would be safer. But my father no longer listened to that voice, because he had learned that waiting without purpose is simply another form of loss disguised as caution. Instead, he adjusted, offering new products, repairing old furniture, listening closely to what people needed rather than forcing what he already knew. And this ability to adapt became his greatest asset, stronger than any savings he had ever guarded. At home, life changed quietly but deeply. Meals became warmer, conversations became lighter, and laughter returned not because money was abundant, but because fear no longer controlled every decision we made. I watched him teach neighbors, share tools, and exchange ideas, and I understood that true wealth multiplies when it moves through people instead of hiding from them, because value grows faster when it is shared than when it is locked away. One afternoon, a man asked him how much money he had saved over the years, and my father smiled gently and said he had saved none, but built everything. And that answer confused some, angered others, and inspired a few who were ready to hear it. He explained that money is not loyalty, it does not stay simply because you ask it to, and that the world does not reward patience alone, but purposeful effort aligned with courage. As I grew older, I realized that the lesson was not against saving itself, but against saving without direction, against freezing life in place while time continues to move forward without mercy. My father often said that money must have a job, just like a person, because when it has no role, it slowly becomes a problem rather than a solution, creating anxiety instead of opportunity. He showed me that even small beginnings matter, that starting imperfectly is always better than dreaming perfectly, and that movement creates clarity while hesitation creates illusion. There were moments when failure knocked hard, when a large order fell through, when tools broke, when mistakes cost time and energy, but each setback reinforced the same truth, that problems faced actively lose their power faster than problems avoided. I noticed that people who only saved lived in constant tension, always worried about loss, while those who created something lived with effort but also with hope, because hope feeds on motion. My father aged, his hands grew slower, his back leaned forward, but his mind stayed open, flexible, and alive, because creation keeps the spirit young even when the body grows tired. He once told me that the poorest man is not the one without money, but the one without the courage to begin, because without beginning, nothing can ever grow. As his workshop became a steady source of income, he did something unexpected. He invested in teaching others, helping young men learn skills, not for profit alone, but because he believed that knowledge multiplies wealth beyond numbers. I watched boys who once had nothing learn to create something, and I saw how confidence replaced fear in their eyes, the same way it once did in my father's. The metal box was eventually thrown away, not out of anger, but because it no longer represented anything meaningful. It was a relic of a life built on waiting rather than living. My father said that saving money without purpose is like breathing without moving. It keeps you alive, but it never takes you anywhere. He reminded me that life rewards those who respond, not those who hide, and that the world belongs to those who are willing to engage with it rather than protect themselves from it. As I stepped into my own adulthood, facing choices that demanded courage, I felt the weight of his lesson guiding me, reminding me that comfort is often the enemy of growth, and that fear often pretends to be wisdom. When I invested my first earnings into learning a skill instead of storing it away, I felt the same fear he once felt, but also the same spark that leads to transformation. I understood then that money used to build ability never truly disappears, because skills cannot be taken by inflation, crisis, or time. My father taught me that security is not a number, but a relationship with effort, learning, and adaptability, and that those who understand this never truly fall, even when they stumble. Today, when people ask me for advice, I do not speak about amounts, accounts, or shortcuts. I tell them a story about a man who once believed safety lived in a metal box and later learned that freedom lives in action. I explain that saving money without growth is like standing still on a moving road. Eventually everything passes you by, and you are left wondering why protection never arrived. I say that money should serve your life, not replace it, and that fear should never be the foundation of any plan meant to last. Because the greatest lesson my father ever gave me was not about wealth, but about courage, about choosing movement over paralysis, and about trusting yourself enough to start even when the outcome is uncertain. And that is why I repeat his words now, not as advice born from theory, but as truth carved through experience, loss, and renewal. Never save money just to feel safe. Make it move, make it work, make it grow, because life itself only rewards what dares to live. As the story of my father continued to unfold, I began to realize that what truly changed his life was not the workshop itself, but the moment he stopped seeing money as something to defend and started seeing it as something to direct. Because once fear released its grip, his mind opened to possibilities that had always existed but were invisible behind caution. Every decision he made after that carried intention, not desperation, and even when outcomes were uncertain, there was a quiet confidence guiding his actions, a sense that movement itself was progress, regardless of speed. I noticed that challenges no longer felt like threats, but like signals, messages asking for adjustment rather than surrender. And this shift transformed how our home felt, replacing tension with purpose and silence with meaningful effort. My father often explained that money locked away creates the illusion of control, while money put to work teaches humility, because once you invest it, you must also invest yourself, your attention, your patience, and your willingness to learn. He said that when money sleeps, fear stays awake, but when money moves, courage follows, and I saw this truth reflected in his daily routine, waking early not out of anxiety, but out of intention, knowing his actions mattered. The community around us slowly changed as well, because growth has a way of spreading quietly, and people who once mocked his caution now observed his consistency, realizing that stability does not come from hoarding, but from contribution. I watched him negotiate fairly, treat clients with respect, and reinvest not only in materials but in relationships, understanding that trust compounds faster than interest ever could. There were moments when easy money tempted him, shortcuts that promised quick returns without effort, but he refused them, saying that money earned without value always returns to nothing, because it has no roots to hold it in place. He taught me that patience is powerful only when paired with action, otherwise it becomes an excuse to delay living, and that many people mistake waiting for wisdom simply because it feels safer than trying. As I matured, his words reshaped how I viewed risk, showing me that risk is not the enemy, ignorance is, and that informed effort always outweighs blind caution. He explained that saving money without growth is like preserving fruit until it rots, believing time alone will protect it, when in reality, usefulness is what gives value its life. Sometimes he spoke about his past with honesty, admitting that fear once disguised itself as responsibility, and that he had mistaken inaction for discipline, until life forced him to see the cost of waiting. Those confessions carried more weight than any advice, because they were shaped by hunger, doubt, and slow realization, not theory or ambition. The workshop became a place of learning not just for skill, but for mindset, where every mistake was examined calmly and every improvement celebrated quietly, reinforcing the belief that progress is built step by step, not imagined overnight. I learned that growth does not require confidence at the beginning, only commitment, and that confidence arrives later, shaped by repetition and resilience. My father often said that the future belongs to those who prepare by doing, not those who prepare by hiding, and that money is merely a tool that magnifies whatever intention you attach to it. If your intention is fear, it multiplies fear, and if your intention is creation, it multiplies opportunity. He showed me that wealth built slowly lasts longer because it is supported by understanding rather than luck, and that true freedom comes from knowing you can rebuild even if everything disappears. As years passed, I noticed how lightly he carried himself, how his worries no longer centered on loss, but on improvement, and that shift alone was worth more than any amount he could have saved. He once told me that the most dangerous moment in life is when comfort convinces you to stop growing, because stagnation feels peaceful until reality demands movement again. When setbacks came, and they always did, he faced them with calm evaluation instead of panic, adjusting his approach, learning, and continuing forward without blaming circumstances or retreating into fear. This mindset influenced everyone around him, teaching without preaching, proving through action that stability is not found in accumulation, but in capability. As I stepped further into my own path, I realized that the true inheritance he gave me was not money, but perspective, a way of engaging with life that favors creation over preservation. I learned that money saved eventually asks to be spent, but skills invested continue to pay silently, long after the initial effort is forgotten. My father said that people who fear loss often lose the most, because they never allow gain to enter their lives, guarding emptiness with devotion. He explained that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move while fear is present, and that this decision changes everything. The world outside continued to shift, prices rose, systems changed, uncertainty remained constant, but inside our lives there was resilience, because our foundation was no longer dependent on frozen resources, but on adaptable effort. Now, when I look back at the man he once was, counting coins in silence, I do not judge him, because fear is learned, and courage must be practiced, often painfully. What matters is that he learned before it was too late, and that his lesson now lives through me and through everyone who hears this story and recognizes themselves within it. Because the truth remains simple, yet difficult to accept, that money alone never saves anyone, but understanding, action, and movement always create a way forward. And this is why I continue to say, with clarity and conviction, never save money just to protect yourself from life, because life rewards those who participate, not those who hide. Make your money work, make your effort visible, make your courage real, because growth begins the moment you stop waiting for safety and start building it.